As Asia's largest Pride event took place on Saturday, visitors from all over the world gathered on the streets of Taipei to celebrate. We explore how Taiwan became Asia's first and only country to recognize same-sex marriage and how LGBT+ inclusion has elevated the country's profile while many unresolved inequalities remain. Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks, covering the latest global news and analysis from a Taiwan perspective. I'm Betty Chen.
I'm Rath Wang. Joining us in the studio today is Jay Lin, founder and CEO of Portico Media, the largest global LGBT+ platform. Jay was hailed by Newsweek magazine as one of the world's top 15 innovators in 2019, and Tsou Tzung-han, Taiwan bureau chief of Deutsche Welle, Germany's public international broadcaster. Tzung-han is also the chair of Taiwan Equality Campaign, one of the main LGBT+ advocacies that successfully advocated for same-sex marriage to become law here. I spoke earlier to Taiwan's representative to the Netherlands, Ambassador Chen Hsin-hsin, on how LGBT+ rights have become a common language for progress internationally, and Maria Sjödin, executive director of Outright Action International based in New York, one of the largest LGBT+ advocacies in the world, formerly known as the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. Let's start today's discussion with how Taiwan was able to legalize same-sex marriage despite fierce opposition from many of the traditional elements of society and the current state of LGBT+ rights in the nation. Jay, first we'd like to start off with you as a LGBT+ out business leader. And I've heard you've been very involved in the launch of Equal Marriage Campaign, which now has rebranded to Taiwan Equality Campaign. Can you talk about how and what process Taiwan had to go through to legalize same-sex marriage and what obstacles still remain?
Great. Thanks, Rath. Hi, good to see you, Betty and Toto. It's great to be here talking about this issue after the celebration of the 20th Taipei Pride. I remember when coming back into Taipei in 2005 and going to the Pride Festival when there were only 1,000 people or so, and now massive turnout from people in Taiwan as well as overseas. Talking about marriage equality, the quest for this process, I think the watershed moment for me was in 2016 in October, when there was a very unfortunate suicide of a French professor by the name of Jacques Picot. And he committed suicide because he was in a 30-year relationship with a Taiwanese man. But with his partner in his deathbed, he could not make any medical decisions, nor did he have access to their communal property after his partner's death. And so that very unfortunate suicide by Professor Jacques Picot highlighted to the whole nation why it was important, not just for straight people, but also for gay people in committed relationship to also have protection. Equal protection under the law. And so in 2016, it was also a climate where politicians in the legislative yuan across political parties were very vested in at least putting some form of a bill for votes. Unfortunately, it got stalled, but at that time, a lot of opposition as well as pro-marriage equality people organized massive protests, massive gatherings. But it was only until 2017 in May did the Judicial Yuan, the Constitutional Court, come out with interpretation that declared Taiwan's marriage to be between only of a man and a woman to be unconstitutional, giving the Legislative Yuan 2 years to come up with a bill to really correct that. Following that in 2018, there was an electoral referendum by the people which restricted the definition of marriage equality to be not under civil code, but only through provisional law. And so it's a very long process where you have the executive yuan involved, the legislative yuan involved, as well as the constitutional court. Finally, in 2019, the Judicial Court came out with an interpretation giving gay couples almost the same rights as straight couples, with the exception of in vitro fertilization as well as adoption. But essentially, by May 24th of 2019, this interpretation from the Judicial Yuan was finally a law of the nation.
Wow,
so therefore, Yes.
A super long process.
It's a very long process involving the whole entire island.
If you could talk a bit about like what opposition did your organization run into and how did you make it happen? Because there seems to be different elements of society that seems to not also be supportive of this.
Yeah. Well, so initially, like I mentioned, with the death of Professor Picot being such a high-profile media exposure, civil societies automatically banded together, creating the organization Marriage Equality Coalition, consisting of 5 different nonprofit as well as for-profit organizations, including Gaga And there were other civil societies that banded as well to really bring the topic of marriage equality and gay rights to the classrooms, to the boardrooms, to the living rooms, to the kitchens, and make it a topic that people are willing to discuss. And through this discussion, really to see what opposition really have in terms of hesitation on why they would not want their neighbors or their relatives to have the same rights to get married. And it was an ongoing topic that it is going on till today. I mean, the law might have passed, but in Taiwan, as in many parts of the world still, there's still a lot of discrimination against gays. This is a continuous process. But at least we are lucky to be living in Taiwan, to be the first country in Asia to have reached that marriage equality status.
Still the only country.
Yes. Yes.
Very well said, Jay. You talk about the long-term process happening in Taiwan. So Tzung-han, now I would like to ask you the question. As a long-time senior correspondent and also the spokesperson for the equality movement for the LGBT plus individuals, what changes have you observed throughout the process? And we know that there are still some laws during the process. We want to legalize the same-sex marriage and people have made a lot of efforts. So what changes have you observed?
Before I talk about this, I want to congratulate Jay for his team winning the Golden Bell Awards for the production of one lesbian drama. Mm-hmm. I mean, by congratulating him, I want to show that the society is different now. Mm-hmm. Probably only like 4 years ago, we cannot imagine for a award to be awarded to a team like this and to have the director and also the actress on the stage to talk about their own sexuality. Mm-hmm. I mean, from these concrete example, you can see the change from the society. Mm-hmm. And for me, well, I'm the person who always like to exaggerate. I would say like the whole air is different. Mm-hmm. Every breath I take now, I can feel, I can smell liberty for me now. So really, because before the law is legalized, even though we don't have the full protection yet, but before this, I think a lot of people, they live under some kind of disguise. No matter how successful they are as a business leader or someone who work in international media or local media or any like leadership role, they still have to have some kind of disguised color on them in order to survive in their workplaces or in their family. But soon after the legalization of same-sex marriage, I think a lot of people, they feel different. They feel that they can stand up and tell people that about their own sexuality, and they can share their stories with their families. So, and if we look at the figures, it's also very clear. I don't know if you still remember the referendum we had in 2018, mm-hmm. And then when people were asked if they support the same-sex couples to get married, they were only like 30, probably 20 to 30 population of the population supporting this. But from the latest figure now, after 3 years of the legalization of same-sex marriage, it's 60%, more than 60%. Mm-hmm. So you can see a drastic the change of social attitude after the legalization of the same-sex marriage. So the change, they are like in every part of our life, and especially for LGBT people.
Mm-hmm. But what's the reason behind that change? Do you believe it's because people are more used to the idea, but there are also more radical elements that have been traditionally opposed? How do we deal with that kind of issue? Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how people, they are, that they really live their life through this like moral obligations through the legalization of many different kind of regulations, right? So before the legalization of the same-sex marriage, I think a lot of people, when they talk about LGBT issues, they will it's like talking about someone they don't know or someone that they are not familiar with, right? I think you just mentioned that why don't people support the right of their families or their neighbors, right? But people didn't feel that way until we have this special law, right? So I don't know if it's just Taiwan or for other countries too, but as far as I'm concerned, for many places, always you have to have the law first, and then there comes the social change. Yeah.
So that's the larger part that we have to continue to work on.
Yeah, definitely, because we just talk about we don't have the full protection yet in terms of like child adoption and also IVF and also like Taiwanese LGBT group, we cannot get married with someone from a country where his or her country, where the same-sex marriage is not legalized yet.
We'll talk a bit about that in our second section, but it's great how you mentioned that.
But just to echo Tsou and the question that you're asking about opposition. So opposition is always going to exist in any society. But what is different pre-marriage equality and post-marriage equality is that I remember the referendum. There were people saying, oh, if Taiwan allowed gay people to get married, we're going to be facing pandemonium. It's going to be disastrous, and we're going to
HIV island or something like that.
Yeah. But what's different now is that there are thousands of people who are gay couples who are married, and there are hundreds of children who are living under gay households. And I think we're doing pretty well as a country, as a family, and as a society, showcasing that gays and straights can, and everybody and everything in between can exist harmoniously in the society.
That's great how you mentioned that. Yeah. So we'll talk about that in our second section. We just spoke about how advancing rights for LGBT plus individuals have led to the betterment of society as a whole. Let's now hear from Ambassador Chen Hsin-hsin on how Taiwan's legalization of same-sex marriage and the progress the country has made on LGBT plus equality has enhanced Taiwan's soft power in the EU and around the world. The Netherlands is the first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage. Let's take a look.
For starters, I think being an ambassador of Taiwan in the Netherlands, I do believe that raising Taiwan's profile is one of the most important tasks. And in fact, Taiwan has been kind of a hidden gem, to most of the Europeans. That despite the fact that Taiwan is the 21st largest economy, it's not really until very recently, and sadly, thanks to China's increasing military intimidation, that Taiwan started to be enjoying more international press coverage and become better known to the public. And so as we reach out, our main target is the young elites, and mostly students' association and the youth groups of political parties in the Netherlands. And as we all know that nowadays, if there's one issue that the young people really hold dear, I think it's LGBTI rights. Therefore, each time when I was talking to the Dutch audience, especially the younger generation, I will always mention that Taiwan is so far is the first and so far the only country in Asia that has legalized same-sex marriage. And without fail, they always resonate very, very well with the audiences. And so I think actually it's the LGBTI rights that raise our international profile by itself. And so our work is just to make it better known to the public.
It's really fascinating how you mentioned how LGBTI rights and marriage equality has raised Taiwan's profile and brought interest in the European Union. What resonates the most, and how do you think Taiwan can continue to leverage this inclusiveness from LGBT standpoint to gain more support for Taiwan in the Netherlands and Europe?
Well, actually, there was already, since we legalized same-sex marriage, I think this has been already noticed, by some of the LGBTI rights groups in the Netherlands. For example, there was this one NGO named Workplace Pride that has actually organized their regional conference in Taipei back in 2018 I think early 2020, and actually our minister and then some of the government officials were also invited to give a talk. I myself also gave a speech at this conference. So you see how, because of this issue that really, bring us our governments and our people together. And I think we also see that there's a lot of things to be done. And so we can, join efforts and then make the LGBTI rights promotion being, done through our cooperation.
It's really intriguing in terms of how, governments have reacted, and you mentioned workplace pride. What has been the overall reaction of European governments, politicians, other organizations, since you saw this become legalized and in your capacity as the ambassador in the Netherlands?
Well, I think, as a matter of fact, to promote LGBTI rights has been a kind of diplomatic goal for many of the European governments. And when I was working in Taiwan in the European Affairs Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I already noticed that many of the representatives of the European countries will participate in the LGBTI rights movement in Taiwan. So, for example, like Taipei Gay Pride, So, it went without saying that when we finally legalized same-sex marriage, it was, I think all the governments, European governments, welcome wholeheartedly. And then I remember, I think a few months after we adopted the law, there was a conference co-hosted by our ministry and also the EU mission in Taiwan. And, that was to promote the same-sex marriage and gender parity. I think this is like kind of a nice gesture to show their recognition to our progress. And then it also shows that they are very willing to work closely with Taiwan on this issue.
You just heard from Ambassador Chen Hsin-hsin, Taiwan's representative to the Netherlands, as she spoke to Rath from Hague about how Taiwan's progress in advancing LGBT+ rights has raised the country's profile around the world. We now would like to take a deeper dive into the benefits of LGBT+ inclusion on greater society. So now also I would like to direct my question to Tzung-han. I know that you are a long-term human rights activist and you have been very outspoken about the LGBT+ rights. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the development of human rights and also LGBT rights, how is Taiwan different from China? We know that the situation in China in terms of rights, and also we do see some suppression over the minorities. How is Taiwan different from that? And also, how can Taiwan, as mentioned by Ambassador Chen, work with like-minded democracies to further advance LGBT+ rights?
It's a very tough question. Because in terms of human rights, all human beings are created equal, right? So when I think of all the 20 million LGBT plus people in China, I feel that they are my brothers and sisters, right? And they also deserve to have the same right that we have. And one phenomenon we have to also look into is that there are around probably like 10 million women married to gay men in China because of because of the pressure from their family, right? So we have all these people, they live under such a difficult situation. While we have to talk about how Taiwan is different from them politically, right? So there are different aspects we have to look into. So on one hand, I want to say that I feel like they're panned in China, and we do have a lot of connections with them secretly, probably before the recent government they started like oppress or like strike harder on the LGBT groups in China, right? So the connection, some connection are not there anymore. But then when we come back to talk about the situation of Taiwan, where we have to defend our own freedom and democracy, right? As we are the only country where same-sex marriage is legalized, we really have to put it in the context that the power of diversity is also part of the democratic resilience that we have when we compare the two different systems, right? And it's also very clear from the response from the Chinese officials in some official occasions when they are asked about Taiwan same-sex marriage, they will say, they always give very dull response by saying that, in China we respect and we follow the traditional custom. There's nothing else that they can say, right? So basically, then they are telling the world that Taiwan is different from China, right? So when we think about the difference of the two countries or places for some people, I think we have to take care of different aspects. On one hand, we have to know that there are people suffering there in China, but on the other hand, we have to know that for Taiwan to have the marriage equality is a way to really protect Taiwan in a way. And these two, sometimes we have to look them differently, but sometimes we also have to talk them together. So that's why I think it's a tough question for me. I don't know if I expressed myself well enough.
In terms of protecting Taiwan, for our international audience, does that mean protecting our rights here, or do you feel our soft power and how we're seen abroad?
See, the ambassador just talked about how the awareness or the visibility of Taiwan has gained so much after we legalized same-sex marriage, right? So for a lot of democratic countries, they know that there's a place, or not just the country, not the political leaders, but also for the general population. They know there's a place in Taiwan where they want to go there for the pride, for the liberty they have, and to celebrate the diversity. So they know there's a place in Asia that's so different from the rest of the Asian countries, and especially from the authoritarian China, right, Beijing government. So that's something very important in terms of press-wise for Taiwan to be seen, right? And that's one thing. And the other thing is that by legalize same-sex marriage and keep striving hard for the other goals that we have to achieve, we're showing the world, just like what President Tsai said, that we are willing to work with the democratic world, and we are part of the family. Don't leave us behind, right?
So it keeps Taiwan on the map, like
it's a very clear message and very strong message, and actions speak louder than words, right? We don't just say it, we did it, right?
Speaking of action, it's all about people. And Jay, I wanted to ask you as a business leader, as an LGBT open business leader, the world's #1 priority, as they say, the war of the 21st century is actually the war for talent. How will LGBT inclusion or friendly policies attract more talent into Taiwan and keep Taiwan competitive in terms of innovation?
Tsou already had a lot of the answers to your questions. If I could use some of what he said as some key words, it would be freedom, liberty, happiness. I'm putting that in there. Of course, same-sex marriage equality is only part of the whole sort of offerings that I think Taiwan, as a beacon for democracy, beacon for equality, diversity, really has. And whether it's for businesses or for individuals, life is not just about work, right? We're constantly talking about work-life balance. So I think people, regardless of their talent or their background, want to live in an environment where they can feel free, they can feel genuine, they can feel respected, where they don't need to hide. And I think Taiwan is a very unique place in Asia for that. Not only vis-a-vis China. I think there's so many other countries in Asia where minorities, whether it's sexual minorities or racial minorities, what have you, are suffering, in silence.
But do you feel that message has been adequately portrayed overseas? And how much of that has translated into, like, say, dollars? Or have you seen more foreign investment coming into
I do.
Taiwan?
And it's not just singularly sort of like the freedom aspect or the liberty aspects. There are two other aspects that have become increasingly clear, I think, to the international community, that Taiwan stands in a place of its own. One is how well the government managed to keep COVID under control, at least in the first phase. So like a solid government, a very transparent government that communicates with the people instead of hide facts. And the other one is our tech sector, whether it's TSMC, semiconductors, and increasingly more our software sector and our internet sector, where real talent are crucial for the building of this sector. And it doesn't really require a factory to be here, but it does require brains and talents to actually get involved. So in this climate age of digital nomads, I think more and more people are looking at Taiwan as a suitable place to actually set up their venture, bring their families. And even if they're here and doing work in Ukraine or in Mexico, I mean, they want to live a life where they can really be genuine and themselves. And this is reflected in the, I think, exponential rise of people who are applying for the Taiwan's gold cards. Gold cards are permitted from our Ministry of Immigration for people who exemplify certain talents that Taiwan wants to attract. And whether it's in the tech sector, I have many friends who have applied for the gold card for their talents in arts and culture. They're all coming here and really coming here and enjoying it and really wanting to stay here. And in a sense, kind of creating a chain migration, chain sort of pull to have more and more people come to Taiwan.
You do hear a lot of
live in
stories,
an environment
like
that they can feel happy and prosperous in. Yeah. So yes.
So indeed, you're talking about the talent, and also you talk about COVID. If we still remember before COVID, back in 2019, Taiwan's Pride Parade attracted 200,000 people to the streets of Taipei. But because of COVID, well, we have to go quiet for a while. But now this year, the Pride Parade, we are very happy. People are excited, and people want to take to the streets to demonstrate their beauty and their charisma. So I'm just wondering, can the LGBT plus inclusion become a magnet or become a selling point to boost our pink economy or pink tourism? What do you see?
No, definitely. If we look around, in Asia, there are still more than 20 countries where same-sex activities is criminalized one way or the other, right? So for our neighbors, a lot of them will want to visit us, come us. That's when they can show their genuine self, right? Not to mention also for travelers from all over the world. And when they come to join the parade, it's not the parade itself, right? It's about stay here for a while, accommodation, eating here, drinking here, traveling here. So it's a whole package when we talk about pink tourism, right? And from what I know, the first group to advertise the Pride itself is not the Pride. It's not the organization, but all the nightclubs. Because now, finally, the borders open. Now they can, they can welcome all these guests from all over the world, and nightclubs can, can work again. People can have fun again, right? So it's just like a magnet, like you mentioned. Like we attract so many people here, but they are not only here for the Pride, and it's not only the LGBT. People who come here, but also we're our allies, their friends and family. And after they come here, they know here, they might come here again or bring their friends. So we can see a long-term effect on this.
Good. So from business perspective, Jay, how do you see that?
Yes, I mean, tourism is one. Like I mentioned here earlier, people, whether they're gay or straight, are coming here. They're bringing their money here, so they need financial services to can cater that money. They're bringing their money here to invest in here. I see that all as part of pink economy. Not necessarily businesses that are catering to only the LGBT, but also businesses created by LGBT catering to the mainstream audience.
I think Jay definitely he has to talk about the entertainment business.
Yes.
Yeah, that he is.
Platform,
that he is involved in.
That's actually our next question.
Yes.
We wanted to
I was
ask.
waiting for that.
Finally, it's coming.
Okay, Taiwan's known as one of the freest countries in Asia in terms of press freedom.
Yeah.
And as a leader of the largest LGBT plus content streaming platform, what opportunities do you see here and going forward?
Massive opportunities. I started the Taiwan International Queer Film Festival in 2014 because I perceived at that time there was really lack of visibility and representation of LGBT characters and storylines in our traditional media outlets, whether it's the cinemas or television or where have you. And so looking back in 2014 is a very different picture than 2022. I mean, Tsou Tzung just congratulated me and us, our team, on winning the Golden Bell Awards. If you asked me in 2014 if I could ever imagine that a lesbian series that is featured on an LGBT streaming platform could win Best Screenwriting, Best Actress, Best Actor. And also, something very amazing about the 27th Golden Bell Awards, which just ended, is that there was a female actress who actually won for the Best Actor Award. So this is how far, our media landscape, our media acceptance, and our media imagination and creativity has come. And so, again, is another beacon of great opportunities and possibilities and imaginations that is very appealing, not only to Taiwanese creators, but also to directors, screenwriters, producers, investors, distributors who want to look for stories that are a little bit different than your normal heteronormative storylines. So they're going to come to Taiwan to cast for actors, to look for directors, and to look for locations. So I think this is a great opportunity that is awaiting the Taiwan's media industry. Along that, there's another genre called BL, that is also taking the world by storm, and Taiwan is no exception. I mean, there's been many BL series that have been produced in Taiwan that have done extremely well as well. And that actually is not catering just to the LGBT community, but to the mainstream community, mostly women. So I think this whole confluence of the mainstream of LGBT, the rise in popularity of BL, spells very good opportunities for the creative industry in Taiwan. And I want to also footnote to that to say, in terms of the pink economy for the media industry, it is not just about series or documentaries or shorts or films. I think the opportunity now is how IPs, intellectual property, stories, whether from a comic book or from a movie, can be expanded into the scalable pink economy where content meets a TV series, meets animation, meets music, meets gaming, meets event, concerts. So this is, thankfully, with the borders opening up and with people traveling again, being tourists again, I think it's ready to become a huge sector of Taiwan's GDP growth.
Wonderful.
It's great how you mentioned there's been new investments coming in terms of media.
Yeah.
We've actually also seen some investments that originally should have gone to China but came to Taiwan. I think, was it last year with Money Boys? Do you think we'll see a lot of that too, that, with the cross-strait complexity, and we're bringing in what is originally supposed to be in China and would come to Taiwan from an LGBT angle? Would you want to take that?
Well, definitely, because not just for the media industry is a big industry, right? So for the work that I'm doing now, we have a long list of people who want to come here to do news pieces or programs on same-sex couples or same-sex families, because we're the only first, not only just first, but only in Asia. So they want to explore how that develops, right? So as the only place where people can do it, they have to come here, right? And I'm not so sure about the entertainment or media industry in Taiwan. I mean, in China, they have all sorts of different problems, right? They are facing with this new government. So, but I still hope, since that we use the same language in a way, that we can influence them somehow or give some comfort for audiences who might not be able to approach this content officially or publicly, but they can find this content somewhere where we can start some change and wait for maybe the next movement to happen, from my personal perspective.
Yeah, to add to that, we live in a flat digital world. So the content that we create or the content that we bring on to Gaga Ulala as a streamer service, one way or another gets consumed by the community or people who want them.
As you mentioned before,
Yes.
the Middle East, where LGBT
Yes.
is seen as taboo or criminalized as
or in
huge
China,
consumer.
right?
In China
Because
as well.
a lot of our content is in Mandarin and we speak the same language. But on top of that, what is kind of phenomenal and ties in between Taiwan and China is that we have become kind of a conduit for a lot of Chinese content, LGBT-related content that can't get distribution in China, but want to get seen by the rest of the world. So we have licensed actually quite a lot of content from China, from LGBT filmmakers onto our platform. And we openly support Chinese filmmakers, the Chinese diaspora, in the making of their content. So recently, we invested in a Chinese filmmaker in Berlin to make a short about his experience there. I mean, it's a scripted story, but it's only an example of how we hope as a platform that we're supporting directors regardless of their nationality and regardless of where they might be coming from.
So you hope Taiwan becomes the world's LGBT haven?
Yeah, or I would say even especially because they're coming from a place where it's difficult to get funding or distribution for this content. We are even more vested in making those stories come to life and be seen by the whole entire world.
That's very inspiring. We just discussed the positive impact of advancing LGBT plus rights. Not only can it raise a country's profile, but it is key to remaining competitive in the global talent war, not to mention other economic, social, and strategic benefits. Let's now hear from Maria Sjödin in New York, the United States. Maria is the executive director of Outright Action International. Formerly known as the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, she tells me despite all the heartwarming progress, many pressing challenges and obstacles still remain in Taiwan and around the world. Let's take a look.
We talk about the rights of LGBTIQ people, speaking of us as, the canary in the coal mine, the warning sign. If our rights are not respected, it often means that rights of other minorities or groups of people aren't respected. So it is critical to respect the rights of LGBTIQ people in all spheres of society. And as a follow-up to that, I think that countries that have made progress around LGBTIQ issues, they show leadership. They show that they value and respect the human rights of all people.
Taiwan is still the first and only country in Asia to recognize same-sex marriage, with legislation passing in 2019. And apart from some areas of improvement needed around transnational marriage, with citizens of countries where same-sex marriage isn't recognized in certain adoption rights, which areas, given your global experience, do you believe Taiwan can continue to improve and work on as a focus point?
I think it has been incredibly important to see Taiwan recognize marriage equality. And Taiwan being the only country in Asia that has the recognition of marriage equality, it has been really amazing for the region. And we hear a lot from how inspiring it is for activists also in other countries that have, that are maybe far from recognizing marriage equality. But I want to say that in every country around the world, there is still a way to go for full recognition of the human rights of LGBTIQ people. And I think this is important to know, that no matter where you live as an LGBTIQ person, you cannot take for granted that you will have the same rights as everyone else. One of the areas where I think a lot of countries have a pretty long way to go is the recognition of transgender rights. So ensuring that trans people can, for example, get their legal gender identity recognized, their legal gender, and if they need to change their legal gender, that they can do so without any requirements on medical procedures or, extreme waiting periods or anything like that. The gold standard really is for a person to be able to just ask for it, that it should be in a fairly simple administrative process. I think it is critical for any country, no matter whether they have achieved marriage equality or not, to know that and to keep working on that, to ensure that no kids are bullied in schools, for example, to ensure that what we call conversion practices, where someone tries to change the sexual orientation or gender identity of another person, that those things are eradicated. And that people can be out in their workplaces, for example. I mean, I know that a colleague organization that we partner with have recently done a survey that says that only 50% of LGBT people in Taiwan are comfortable being out in the workplace, for example. And I think those are all areas where Taiwan could need improvement, and for the most part, most countries in the world still need to improve.
What areas would you see Taiwan working with other countries, from the government, businesses to nonprofits, in advancing or bringing back those efforts as part of the global movement?
I really think that, it is through a global movement and solidarity that we see internationally that we can progress. And I represent civil society, and I've been working in civil society for over 2 decades at this point. And so I really think that having activists push forward is really a critical way and really the best way to create a better society for all of us. And so having civil society work hand in hand with governments, with corporations, with other stakeholders, I think is really a good way forward. And I think that it is important that countries speak out about the situation that they also see in other countries. And sometimes they need to be critical, sometimes they need, we need diplomacy behind closed doors. We need the visibility. I think it's critical to see out LGBTIQ people in powerful roles, such as in government. I think this is another area where Taiwan has shown leadership. And we need to see out business leaders. We need to see LGBTIQ people in all spheres of society. And having that visibility can be critical because that is how we can advance rights. There's research from many places that show that if you know someone, for example, if you know someone who is gay, you respect gay rights more. And not every single person may know someone who is LGBTIQ and out about it. And so having that visibility through media, for example, is critical because it allows people to learn and to see people and to see themselves in people through the media. And so enhancing that visibility in many different ways is, I think, one way that we can together advance the human rights.
You just heard from Maria Sjödin from Outright International as she spoke to Rath in New York about the global challenges that LGBT plus individuals face and how Taiwan can work on such issues, both domestically and with other countries in advancing human rights. Let's discuss some of those challenges. So now I would also like to direct my question to Tsou Tzung. We know the theme of this year's Pride Parade is transgender and infinity, but we still know that in terms of the rights for LGBT plus people, sometimes the rights of the transgendered people are still lagging behind, even far behind some of the other countries that have not legalized same-sex marriage. So what can we do? What can Taiwan do to better protect the rights of transgendered people?
I think we are still doing it as is to make people know more about this issue, right? In this recent survey I just talked about from the government, that they ask people what's the definition of transgender. If they know transgender might be someone who want to dress differently or who identify themselves as different from as their sex, that's assigned when they're born, right? So when people get to know it, it's the starting point. But as you said, it's lagging behind. And I also know transgender group that oftentimes they will complain that their issues are not seen when we talk about marriage equality, when everyone is talking about, when people talk about the word 同志, people think of gay and lesbian and not transgender. So that's why we have to have a parade, a pride for them, just one day before the main pride, is to have them to have their own voices, to talk about their needs, right? So there are so many issues that we have to tackle because practically for a lot of transgender, they have to go through genital change operations to change their gender on their ID card. So it's something that they want to change, right? By identifying as a different sex or gender doesn't mean that they have to do the operation. Not to mention that they need also permits from 2 psychiatrists, and they also need a lot of preparation. There's a lot of difficulty, and they have to pay by themselves. it's not covered by the national health insurance, right? So there are just so many difficulties they have to face to be themselves at first. So not to talk about other issues that dormitory that they can choose, or washrooms that they can go to. So people just have to start from the beginning and then start to also look into all these issues that transgender group they want to advocate for.
Do you feel that there's not enough awareness? Since if you look at same-sex marriage, it seems LG has been out on the forefront, but T is that because there's not enough people coming out, or what's the reason behind that?
Well, definitely there are number-wise, right? There are not so many of them. Like they're often mixed in this big LGBT group, right? And I also think there's a very deep.
Is it discrimination or?
Yeah, against them. Why? I'll use my father as example. Please forgive me. when he knows that I'm gay, he said like, "Oh, it's okay. You look just like a man." What does that mean? If I look like a girl, then that's not okay, right? But that's the challenge you see, like transgender group they face every day, is that they look different from how their bodies are, right? And that reminds me of also another absurd regulations that on our like national ID, you have to look like your sex, assigned sex. If you're a man, you have to look like a man on your ID card. For transgender people, they cannot show who they are in their daily lives. So oftentimes the ID card look very different from who they are in their real life, right? That's absurd, that's ridiculous. That's why we need not only for the legislation, but also, again, the same for just like the LGBT, just like the marriage equality, is the recognition and social awareness on this. It's everything, yeah.
Just to echo what Tsou Tzung said, I think to me the key two terms about this issue would be education and visibility. And education, to what Tsou Tzung mentioned about like his father or the mainstream population, because there are much fewer transgender people than there are gays or lesbians. So there's a lot of communication and discussions that is required. But more importantly, I think also the education within the LGBTQ community ourselves. I think there's still a lot of I don't want to say mainstream gays, we still need to understand more about the plight of other minorities within our umbrella.
But when you say less, that means less visible, but they're actually there. Is that?
Yes, of course, not invisible. I mean, not non-existent. I'm just saying not as visible because of the absolute numbers and the attention that they get overall when we're talking about LGBTQ issues. I think we should recalibrate this a little bit and more focus on this. I mean, I see this happening in the United States. I mean, past marriage equality before we did, and now if you go to film festivals or if you see TV dramas, there is a concerted focus on bringing the plight of transgender people's story to the TV screens. That's why you have, Orange is the New Black. You have people like Laverne Cox, becoming more visible celebrities and spokespeople talking about these issues. So that leads to my second point, which is visibility. I think in the future, I hope there inevitably will be more transgender people who will rise to the top, whether they're politicians like Audrey Tang, or singers, or business people who can actually be their authentic selves and tell their stories. And I think that moment will come, and that will be a huge change in terms of people's perceptions of what a transgender person is. Just for example, like Ellen Page, when she came out, how many people were like, wow, okay, that's a transgender person, and really kind of reevaluate what they think about gender, what they think about sex, and also about sexual orientation.
So that's the reason why some other Asian countries, say Japan or Thailand, are seen by some activists as more transgender friendly than, say, Taiwan or other countries that haven't really brought that up. You feel that's from visibility?
Yes, I think in a place like Thailand, there are definitely a lot more visible transgender community. I mean, there are transgender politicians in their parliament, for example, who can actually advocate vividly and clearly and
for transgender rights.
For gender rights.
And sometimes it's not about gender reassignment, it's more about reconfirmation, right? Just making sure that they know who they are and be comfortable in whichever kind of identification they are, right?
Right. I wanted to move on to our next question in terms of marriage equality. The elephant in the room is Taiwan has same-sex marriage, but we still have some work to do to get to full marriage equality. Can you talk about how we can get there? And for our international audience, Taiwan still has some areas to improve on in terms of adoption and in terms of transnational same-sex marriage with countries that do not recognize same-sex marriage. If you could talk a bit about that.
Well, I think there has been a couple court cases where the transnational couples, where one of the partners is from a country where the marriage equality is, or same-sex marriage is not legal there, but having been granted the right to actually create that same-sex union here in Taiwan. So I think there will inevitably need to have more transnational couples who do the judicial court challenge, and also transnational couples who are willing to profile their stories. Again, back to visibility and representation for people to see why this ridiculous discrepancy still exists just because the person is from a different country than the other one, right? And I think this is going to take a bit more time, but I think we will get there as well with more transnational couples, vocalizing this discrimination, right? I think more people are going to understand their plight, and I think the civil societies are working as much as they can to also lobby the legislators and to find ways to bring this issue into sort of like the media focus. So currently, I think the challenge is that same-sex couples can only adopt if the child is biologically related to one of the parents. And I think, again, this is an issue of visibility as well. I think it is a very new concept for a lot of people in Taiwan to see two men or two women as parents. There's a lot of uncertainty, fear, whether the children growing up under such households could be harmful to the children. And I think with more gay families willing to be more visible, with more kids growing up healthy and happy in gay households, it's also going to change the hearts and minds of people as well.
And you're the father too.
Yes, I'm a father of two 6-year-old kids. Yeah.
And Tsou will soon become a father. You're expecting, right? So would you like to share what kind of difficulties or challenges you have encountered? And how do you counter the, say, discrimination or the, say, different opinions from your family or from the society? Maybe there are some traditional, like religious or other kinds of concern.
I think I'm the lucky one. I don't face that many discriminations in my daily life. It's maybe also because I'm a tough person that people they don't want to mess with me. But what I want to say is that Jay just talked about doing this one step at a time. But sometimes when I think about this, I just don't realize why can we just have the same right like heterosexual couples by just using the civil code. We already have it, right? So, but I understand that the society need to have this progress gradually. But just, in the middle of the night, I will ask myself that why can't we just enjoy the same right by just have us using the civil code now, because already all the protection is in it, right? So for me, it's weird to have, it's just like segregation area where you have the water fountains for white people and water fountains for black people. Now you're decorating this water fountain for the black people, telling them, oh, it's getting better, but we only just need water fountain. So it might be too progressive to suggest this, but I think we should just face the core of the problem is that we still don't have the full protection for the LGBT people, so we don't have the equality yet.
Just to add on to full equality, in terms of the workplace, a recent survey, as Maria mentioned, 50% of people in Taiwan, LGBT people, are not comfortable being out in the workplace. How do we deal with this? And why is there this fear of coming out?
it's very difficult. It's money related, right? It's livelihood related. In working in media, I've been working in Taiwanese media, and I know how all these like big bosses, they want to have like anchor person or journalists who show up in front of the camera to have like men be like manly and girls be like girly. We still have this very traditional ideas going on, even though we already have the law, right? So it's not easy. It's not easy, but at least we can start from the very basic things. For example, when I applied for, just like the leaves for my wedding, I didn't get it because, my boss, she said like, oh, we haven't legalized yet back in 2016, right? But she could have given me that leaves because that's not like really very serious, something that need to be talked about, right? It's just, for other heterosexual couples, they don't even need those like cards. They can get all these like days off, right? So it's really lies also still in all these like old generation's thoughts, but as we know, like old generations are fading. So
what does it take, you think? Does it take education? Does it take a government effort to make it happen?
It takes courage, let's say so. It takes courage for someone in a leadership role to say, let's do it. We just give them the stem right that they should have.
Leadership would be like the president of Taiwan or someone like that, or someone at
Or
that
the leader.
Top management in a company.
Like Jay, I want to work for him,
I mean, if you're talking about companies, I think the leadership would be, the C-suites, right? The upper management or the HR, to really look at what the best practices are to create a safe and warm and diverse environment for people to be really who they want to be, and to really reach out if you don't know what that policy might be, or if you don't know how to create that workplace. I think there are a lot of civil societies now who are willing to engage with the HR and management, or maybe there's some multinational corporations who are a bit more advanced already in implementing DE